Welcome, synthesizer sickos. I'm Vulture Culture, and that was Stickerbush Symphony by the indelible David Wise. And all of the synth sounds you just heard are from Halogen FM, the brand new FM synthesis plugin by GForce Software. Not only does the plugin sound incredible, but it also is the first time, in my opinion, that FM synthesis has been made easy for everybody to understand. So if you can understand a mini Moog, you can absolutely understand what's going on over here. So welcome. The way we're going to do this live stream is we're going to check out some of the presets that I made for Halogen FM, and then we'll go through how to program the sounds yourself. And it is super simple. So really excited to have you here. If this is your first time, can I get a scum cheers for all of the new people here? I appreciate you guys. We do this live stream every Wednesday night at 9, checking out something to do with synthesizers. So welcome. Cheers. So this first sound that I used in place of the saxophone that David Wise would use when he's playing live or on the original soundtrack is this CSFM lead. And it really is more of a Blade Runner blues type thing. It's a very beautiful sound. Cheers, guys. I appreciate it. And it just goes to show that Halogen FM is not all bells and DX70 type. And we've got beautiful dynamic range on this patch. And you'll notice that little pitch dive right at the end there. So I want to talk about a couple of other patches. So let's talk about the very first patch. So if you just installed Halogen FM and you turn it on, you're going to hear my patch, Dubstation Hero, named after my friend Dubstation Zero in the chat. So when I made this patch, I was inspired. He usually asks for sort of an evolving stab type thing. And so I was trying to do that. I didn't succeed at it. And instead, I created this interesting bell texture using the looping envelopes inside of Halogen. So it's such an honor to be the default preset on any synthesizer. And so shout outs to you, Nick. I appreciate you for being in my life and inspiring me. And you inspired this preset, and GForce Software thought it was good enough that they made it the default preset, which is super cool. What I saw in the chat, somebody asked if it does MPE. Not technically, Spirit Groove. It does poly aftertouch and a couple of other things too, though, but not true MPE yet. And same thing with micro tuning, if anybody's interested in that. So let's go through a couple of the other presets that I made. And so real quick here, let's go into maybe some effects here. I've got a couple here. Aegon Wastes. This is a sort of, if you want to go, that was a very beautiful patch. This is a very ugly patch. So really great if you want to get this sort of like industrial raw texture. Really shows when you take the synthesizer in the opposite direction, the power you can only get with an FM synth. Here's another good one for industrial type textures. I've got EBM Metal Hits, and this one's so much fun because it almost sounds like you took a Emacs and you sampled some sort of metal hit and stretched it across the key bed, because every key has a different sound. So you get a different thunk with every key. Super fun. What are some other cool ones? Let's go into the keys here. We have the e-piano sound, noisy e-piano sound I made for the intro of Stickerbush Symphony. This is Fendrana Drifts. Shout out to you if you know the reference. And this patch is using the incredible reverb, of course, but it's actually using the noise of the LFO routed to the oscillators here, and that's what's giving us that noisy texture. So really good example here of sort of a 4-operator standard FM e-piano type thing. Not that different from e-piano 1 from the DX7, except we have a couple of advantages. One is, like I said, this noise LFO. If I turn this down, you could hear that it turns into a regular LFO, right? And we can actually even accentuate the pitch envelope here and everything by turning up mod. And then it really does become that Icefields patch from the MS-2000 that Kenji Yamamoto, I believe I'm saying his name correctly, used for the track Fendrana Drifts. So that was the inspiration for this one. I love that type of sound. And so we're going to go through the macros, everything that you could do with this, but I just want to cover a couple of more patches. So yeah, it was an honor, honestly, Synthsonic, to be able to be part of the sound design team. So let's cover some other stuff that we could do. Here's another one that I did somewhere in here, Prog Rock Sex Icon. So this is an example of how you can actually use this LFO and the noise slightly less here to be able to create sort of an analog drift. And so what we're actually going to hear is sort of a virtual analog mini Moog lead. And if you look at the reverb here, you'll see the density is all the way down, but the size is all the way up. And so what that's basically doing is creating a slapback. Can you hear that? It's just like a once echo, which is really useful, A, to give the patch a little more width, but B, to kind of give it that almost 70s sort of tape echo slapback type thing. Paul, welcome. And I agree with you. They have really nailed it between the randomization features, the macros, everything is very cool what they've been able to do here. So real quick, I think there's probably only a couple of others that I want to cover before we get into some sound design. There's so many great patches. I could hardly go through all of them. Let's see. Textures. Did I do any other ones? Yeah, here's a more Ice Planet 9000 type sound, Arrakisian Twilight. So again, this can go all the way from cinematic and monstrous to very aggressive, distorted type sounds. I mean, some of the bass patches here can be so ripping. I think I covered some of these, but just some really cool ones. And then, of course, all sorts of the kind of racier, dubstepier type stuff. So with all of that, we could spend the whole live stream just checking out all 300 plus presets, right? And that's what I always say about the GForce stuff as well, is even if you're not interested in making your own sounds, it's worth it to get the GForce stuff just because the sound design team always puts out an incredible amount of great patches, that are very useful. So, but for tonight, I want to talk about, I'm sure some other YouTuber will just give you guys all of the patches and they can get the views for that. I want to talk about how to actually make your own patches because that's really the strength of this plugin. There's going to be, if you want to just use presets, there are other FM plugins out there. For me, it is the fact that it's so easy to make your own stuff. This is a 4-operator synth, Nunya. Welcome. With a fixed architecture for better or worse. So we're going to start. I like not touching the macros till later. So we'll just turn operator 2 off. It's essentially like your oscillator, right? And we start with this very, very bright sound. Let's turn timbre all the way down. Interesting, I had a little glitch there. Now we are back to having just a pure sine wave. Very familiar, right? So if you're not, I think we're all good with what a sine wave is here. So let's go through every single function as we go, right? So let's start with frequency, right? This one's as simple as it sounds. So that just simply changes the octave and it steps through fifths as well. Kind of like an overtone series type thing. Now let's talk about the ratio. So any of you FM synth wizards out there, forgive me. Tonight I'm not going to be talking using the most technical language. I'm going to try my best to speak intuitively, romantically, just talk about what these parameters actually do in terms of sound and not what they do technically, because I'm not an engineer, right? So ratio with timbre all the way down, I think will do nothing. You could still hear it, but it's very subtle. And what that is the second operator that's modulating operator 1. So this is immediately I launch into the technical stuff, so I apologize. But all you have to think of this as is sort of the base character for the sound. So if you go 1 to 1 as you increase timbre, it kind of almost functions like a low pass filter, the timbre. And what it's really doing is this is actually, timbre is the volume from the modulator to the carrier. Right, for those of you FM snobs out there. Can I get some scum snobs in the chat? So if I just increase the ratio, you'll notice it has a different sound than at 1 to 1. So let's just hear all of these sound. So if you want to get like some really interesting harmonically complex stuff, you probably want to use a higher ratio than just 1 to 1 or 2 to 1. Very bright sort of territory with 3. 2 is more bell-like, right? Then we can go to a half. So we have all sorts of different flavors. But again, even if we go down here and we turn timbre all the way down, we still get our sine wave, right? So that's an important thing to think about, is that the ratio is inherently tied to timbre. And timbre is kind of like your low pass filter. It's your overall brightness, or if you're using a lower ratio, it's actually an octave below. So as you bring that timbre up and down, you can hear that it's actually kind of bringing in harmonics below that frequency, which makes sense because it's half that. No, it's a 4 operator because you've got one modulator affecting this carrier, and then over here you have another modulator affecting this carrier as well. Now, within that, we also have brightness. And you'll notice it doesn't do that much. You could hear a little noise creep in. But we have to, again, use a little bit of timbre. And now we'll be able to hear what's going on with brightness. Now, you FM snobs will recognize this as feedback in like your sort of typical DX7 type synthesis. So what's happening here is if we go to like 1-to-1, we can really kind of hear this. We can actually turn it into a sawtooth wave. When we take brightness too far, just like on a Yamaha DX7, it feeds back so much it just becomes noise. Which is actually a useful way to create noise in a, traditional synth. We have this noise LFO, so we could use that too. But if you're in a DX7, this is the only way to get a sort of noise. So that's actually how you would create noise in a DX7, right? Is by using feedback. But in this case, if we just dial it back a bit, we can get ourselves a nice sawtooth sound. And, there's a balance here. A little too much timbre, it gets a little brittle. And that's the thing, is with FM synthesis, it can get brittle fast. And so they actually put a limit in here. And what this does is it adds some anti-aliasing in to clean up the sound. So you could hear immediately how much cleaner that is than... Yeah, it's definitely a beautiful graphic. So depending on the type of sound you're going for, sometimes the limiter is useful. If you want to go into that nasty FM territory, I'd leave the limiter off. So essentially what we have here, brightness can turn your sine wave into a sawtooth wave, right? By using feedback. So that's how you can create that type of sound. But what does distort do? So what's interesting about distort is you'll notice we can get that sort of sound too. Actually, for all I know, that actually might be feedback. It kind of sounds more like it. Yeah, I kind of feel like that might be feedback. So we can get all of these interesting flavors by how we mix bright and distortion. And with limiting on, yeah, I actually think brightness might be wave folding because you get more square wave sounds from brightness than you do from distortion. Here, do you hear how that sounds more like a square wave? So if you want to get those types of sounds, more of like a square wavy type thing out of Halogen, and of course, we're only listening to one of the two oscillators right now. Cheers, guys. That's the way to do it. And so we have these different ways to sort of control the flavor of it. So unlike on a traditional subtractive synth, we only have a low pass filter. Here, we sort of have an interaction between all of these. And this really is it. Everything else is just like on an analog synth, how we modulate these things. We have pan, left to right, volume, of course. And we have two envelopes, mod and amplifier. Amplifier does exactly what you think it does. It's like an amp on any other synthesizer. So by moving this ramp further out, we've increased the attack. We could take that even further if we wanted. Billy Barcody, how's it going, my friend? Yes, it is gorgeous. Sustain, decay, right? If we want to have like a really fast sound. You'll notice that we have this repeats option here, and this is how I made that Dub Stations hero patch. As we increase the repeats, it actually becomes a looping envelope that sort of fades, which is very nice, very useful. So it immediately you sort of get this beautiful sound, and you can bring the attack in as well if you want. So we've got that like sort of triplet thing, and then if we timbre limit, so if I turn it off, we can get these really harsh sorts of sounds. If I turn limit on, it will add some anti-aliasing in. So there's that sort of sound, right? So, and depending on how far you take it, right? Versus without the limiting on, if I turn that off real quick, you can hear it's just gone completely into noise, but turning limiting on, you're able to sort of keep it clean. So depending on the type of sound you're going for, that can be very useful. So for now, let's turn the repeats off, and we can turn the sustain back up, right? And now. We have a sort of a basic kind of 2-op FM sound, right? Let's use 3-to-1. You can hear how bright this gets quickly. So one little tip when using this plugin is to use less timbre than you think. This plugin lets you take it so far. So if you only use it like less than halfway, that can be very beneficial. So just like you have an amplifier envelope on virtually every analog synth, you usually have a filter envelope, and that's what this does. But it can be routed to brightness or timbre or both. And so we have all of these little kind of 3/4 circle here's, and those are how you do your modulation. So let's add the mod envelope to the timbre. And you'll notice it's negative, so we have to actually increase timbre. So again, think about this, it's not adding like you would with an analog synth. As you increase, you have whatever your cutoff is, and then as you increase the envelope generator intensity or the envelope amount, whatever it is, it's adding and it falls to that cutoff. In this case, it's negative. Not a negative envelope, but it's subtracting the highest point is this point on timbre. So let's take this even further. So we have like a very kind of bell-like tone because we have all of these nasty frequencies at the top. And if that's going too far, we could just back off the mod amount here. So this is like sort of in that Casio sort of flavor, right? So let's add some attack to the sound. So now we can get into sort of more glassy pad type territory. Let's take that timbre a little further even, you know. You'll notice that as we've gone over, it's gotten so crazy bright. So maybe back that off a little. So this is like your FM glassy pad type thing, right? And if we change the ratio, it changes the flavor. It's practically almost like a, you know, in this case, we can actually turn it into a saw pad, right? You know, if we wanted. Depending on if we use how much distortion. So that's one version if we go back up to a high ratio. Very bright. So let's turn limiting on. And now we kind of get the best of both worlds because it doesn't go too crazy. Damien, I think it's just because it's pretty. You will notice we've got this pink circle here is just a perfect circle. And the reason for that is because we haven't done anything to operator 2. So, you know, if we change stuff, we'd start to get some of that going on. But because we haven't done anything over here and the volume's all the way off, we just have a circle. So it is indicating to you like what's going on with the sound to a certain extent. It's sort of like a oscilloscope, circular oscilloscope type thing. It's also just like enjoyable. So let's hear how this sounds with brightness instead. And one of the things that I love about Halogen, by the way, is they are emulating vintage DACs and everything under the hood. So you might start to notice that this is not clean FM at all. This has a very vintage feel to it, which you guys know I love. And I think very few plugin manufacturers actually go the extra mile to give us vintage digital. With FM in particular, there's a lot of very sterile sounding FM plugins, and this isn't one of them because they've gone that extra bit. So let's add some modulation to the brightness as well as the timbre now. We can add some velocity to both of those as well. So now if I play more quietly, we don't get as bright of a sound as when I play hard. Now what's interesting is distortion is actually controlled by the amplifier modulator. So let's turn the attack off now. Let's bring that down. So now we have a little like bell impact. And the brightness really only comes in later. Well, we can now add some control to that with the amplifier. So now we're going to sort of start with a little bit of like a sawtooth pluck at the beginning of our sound, and then it transitions into a glassy FM pad. Which I think sounds gorgeous. If we add some key tracking, you can hear what it's doing is it's actually, when you move it this way, it's making the envelope times longer the higher up you go in the key bed. If you go negatively, then this is more like your D50 time variant filter type thing where it gets tighter as you go up. And I find that usually is more useful for creating realistic type sounds, even if, you know, this is a very much a synth sound. I'm not emulating like a guitar or something. But you'll notice they have kind of like a slower envelope and then faster up top, which can be really good for... But then down here... And we could add repeats to this, right? And when you're using key tracking, right, those repeat rates are going to be different, which is how I created that Dubstation Hero patch. And you can kind of take it into audio rate, actually. I mean, are you starting to get it, right? All of the sudden, we go from, you know, kind of like a Casio, maybe a little better than Casio sounding sound. We're still just listening to we're still in two operator mode, essentially. One modulator, one carrier, operator two. So just with that, no effects, no LFO, we have a very interesting... very easy, as Swords and Synthesizers are saying, very easy to program sort of a thing. All right, let's turn the volume down over there. Let's go over to operator 2. Let's make more of a plucky type sound. So you guys know what we're doing. So I'm going to increase mod. We're going to make a really tight type sound. And we can use the same mod envelope for brightness over here. Don't really hear too much of a difference. So I like it without limiting, because with it on, more muted. Kind of a nice click type thing. 3-to-1 sounds good. Now we haven't touched the ring modulator yet, right? So this is interesting. What's interesting? I can't really even hear it. So you need a little bit of timbre in there to be able to hear what's going on. So let's just bring this to 1-to-1. And I'm going to turn ring modulation off because this is affecting the modulator, not the carrier. So the way you want to think about this is this ring modulator is not routed directly to the output oscillator, but to the oscillator that's modulating the output oscillator. I know it's a little technical, but the way you can think about it is if timbre's off, ring modulator doesn't really do anything. If it's on, we can start to hear these subtle tuning variations between the modulator and the carrier. So this is how we actually get detune type effects with only one audible operator, right? Because we're detuning the modulator to the carrier. A carrier is the audible one. Above 50%, it starts to get into the inharmonic territory. And this is how you really make like a good bell tone. Like you want a bell. This is how you can create, it reminds me of Bach Towers in Central Florida, where there's this giant tower where they built, what do they call that? Basically a big bell tower, and it's incredible, but kind of like if you're, I don't have perfect pitch, but even with relative pitch, those bells are not in great tune, and you can kind of get this type of thing. Tripwell, welcome. How's it going? Now we have another way to influence with ring mod, and that's with this fixed ratio. So now, instead of that ring modulator tracking the pitch of the keyboard, which is useful for certain sounds, using fixed means it's working more like the ring modulator on a Yamaha CS analog synth, where it's detached completely from key tracking. So very slow, it becomes just a vibrato LFO, right? As we take it further, we're getting into these, into audio rate, we start getting these really crazy sidebands. Really harsh in harmonic stuff, but again, we sort of can get into, we could sort of get into bell type tones with this. But because that ratio or that speed of the ring modulator is not tied to the notes, it gets crazy and very... As we approach really fast frequencies, let's try it with limit on, see if that changes anything. It's just ripping. It's kind of beautiful. I mean, this is how you can get a really crunchy sort of E piano sound. ratio is not really doing a lot here because so much of the sound is coming from this fixed ring modulator. I could play around all day, and that's the beautiful thing about FM is kind of like with our first operator, I kept it kind of simple for you guys, right? I just gave you, here we go. We got ratio, we've got brightness, distort, timbre. That's it, right? And in a way, you could always use Halogen FM that way, and you have just sort of a more interesting low-pass filter type thing going on here. Is everybody having fun? I'm having fun doing sound design, but I don't know. So I just want to offer up a quick cheers here by way of, I appreciate you guys hanging out with me and hopefully enjoying some sounds, but also if you're interested in Halogen FM, my goal here is by the end of the stream for you guys to know every single parameter and function in here to be able to make every sound you could possibly dream of. And so to that end, if anybody has any questions as I'm going, please shout them out. Can I get a scum cheers in the chat? Cheers, guys. The beard is bearding. Okay, so for this sound, I'm going to bring the amplifier down, which will allow us to bring the timbre up. So this is one way we could get this sort of, what would the phrase be? Sort of like a tine on an E piano. Let's go check out the reverb now. Let's increase the mix. You can hear this wonderful, almost like cave-like texture where you can hear the discrete echoes. If we increase the density and then increase the size, totally surreal sort of character. Let's bring in operator 1. Again, using negative key tracking here. I shouldn't say negative, to the left key tracking. You know, give me a break. Using this low pass filter in here, because now we can really crank the reverb, but actually have it just add kind of like warmth and width and not conflict with the high end. Brian and Boss Enjoyer, welcome to the stream. How's it going? So, really, really simple to get beautiful sounds pretty close to instantly. If I wasn't narrating what I was doing, we would have gotten into the sound very quickly, right? And if you want to save one of these patches, it's as simple as just going to save here. And I'm going to go ahead and put my, we could call this one, what are we going to call this one? Let's call it Broken Glass, author, Vulture Culture. You can add some notes in, and then you can pick where you want stuff to go. So it's kind of keys and it's kind of a pad. I'm going to go more pad. It is evolving, long release, poly, wide, bright, hollow, nostalgic, sharp, warm. Just save it, saves it to your computer, right? That's it. It's as simple as that. Now we have that. How's it going, Adapt? So, let's go to a new patch. Back to square one. Wow. Talk about a bright sound. And again, I just encourage you guys, when you're messing with the synth, be aware of the timbre, because it gets crazy quick. Let's start again with operator one. Do you guys have any requests for the type of sound design we could do? Space is Water says, can it make an acid sound like a 303? That one's tougher. We could try. But the thing is that a 303 is largely based off of filter resonance squelch. And I'm sure some wizard knows how to do that. But I'm not sure if off the top of my head I can think of a way to get that kind of squelch for a 303. But we can definitely do bass. I see Industrial Death Bells. Todd Phipps, yeah. So Dext is great. Dext is, awesome. But when you look at it, it's like just a wall of parameters, right? And I make the analogy here to the original Moog modulars, those giant walls. If you ever see like Hans Zimmer Studio, he's got a lot of Moog modular. And it's incredible. Keith Emerson used to tour with a big Moog modular wall. It's sort of the equivalent of talking about like a laptop versus the original computers that took up so much space, much bigger than a PC. And what Robert Moog did was he took basically how a lot of people used the Moog modular and built that, kind of pre-wired it into a synthesizer called the Mini Moog. And so no, it's not as flexible as a Moog modular. How could it be? It's nowhere near as complex, and you can't route everything to everything like you can on a modular. But with Halogen FM, what they've been able to do is take that same sort of idea of like, hey, it turns out that for most FM sounds, you use the same sorts of ratios and setups. Why don't we just take that and make one synth that sort of does that thing really well? And to me, this is a lot like the Mini Moog in the way that, no, you don't have all of the complexity of 6-stage, 6 operator or 12 operator FM from Yamaha, right? How could it? We're only dealing with 4 operators. We don't have 6-stage envelopes. We have 4-stage envelopes, attack, decay, sustain, release, with a looping, repeating thing, which is cool. But it's much more stripped down, but it also just gives you this incredible advantage. Yeah, Legend HZ a lot. Venture, welcome. How's it going? So we're gonna make some. We need to make some dark industrial bass. So going down here. One thing I'm going to do actually is go into my JS plugins and go to MIDI, and I'm going to grab, what is it? There's somewhere in here, there is a note, transpose notes. That's what I'm looking for. And I'm just going to bring it down 12 semitones. So one little thing about Halogen is they don't let you tune lower than that note. So without that on, this is my lowest note on my keyboard. But I want to go lower than that. Sustain all the way up. Now, one interesting thing about this plugin, and when you go really low, you can hear it. Listen to how much volume we actually lose as we go into this lowest register here. So whatever vintage synth, they said it's a Japanese vintage synth, underrated vintage treasure, I think is something like they said that was what they're emulating here. It doesn't handle low end great. So, I mean, in a way, I think it sounds really noisy and characterful, but it's not like, I tried programming like a lately bass type sound into this, and it's just not the strength of Halogen. So immediately it would make sense, right, to bring timbre all the way up and then add some movement to it by using some attack and decay. So this is how we can get like these really awesome growly. Changing the ratio here. Because at 1:1, we're sort of in a certain kind of territory. somewhat predictable. As we change ratios to more exotic numbers, this is where we get into those types of sounds that really are not achievable with typical virtual analog style synthesis. So at 3-1, I want to back the timbre down. Two to one and 4-1 kind of have this square wavy thing going on. It's really great drum and bass type stuff. Fifth, the 5-1, you really hear the fifth in there. We could, by the way, take this the other way. So if we go to half, then if you're playing half or lower, you need to move your fingers up the key bed, right? Or we could just bring the frequency up. Let's take it down to 1/3. So we have to keep moving our hands up the keyboard or move the frequency up, right? One to 5 is a weird ratio. Anyways, let's go back to, I think, like 2-1. Or like 3-1. 4-1. I think 4-1 sounds really good for this unique sort of sound you're just not going to get from an analog synth. If we take the attack stage out, by the way, we've sort of got a tech house bass, you know? That's a sort of like London bass type sound. Let's involve the LFO finally. So this whole time we haven't been using the LFO. Let's have that affect the timbre, or we could have it affect something else maybe. Or I guess not. I guess it's going to timbre. So this little orange knob here, or orange triangle, means that the LFO is going there. And you'll notice everything's actually very color-coded, right? The LFO is orange. Operator 1 is this sort of beautiful teal, magenta, and then the envelopes are blue, right? Intro, I don't know why this doesn't say delay, because most synthesizers say delay here. I think they were very interested in renaming everything to make it very intuitive, right? Bright, distort, timbre, like let's just get rid of all the jargon and make it whatever. However, I think for most synthesizer players, we know this parameter as delay, which is just delaying the LFO. So now we hear the initial envelope shape. We're getting that wobble type sound that Tripwell might be enjoying. Why don't we sort of just like kind of copy this over here? Let's turn limit off. Not really too much of a difference because we're not taking it too far. So we're going to use kind of the same sort of shape here. I'm going to just eyeball it a bit to try to get a similar shape to what we have. And then sustain all the way up, short release, and bring the volume up. And let's just add some ring modulator to operator 2. And we can modulate all of this with aftertouch as well, right? So if we want to add aftertouch, right? And what's interesting too is we have an aftertouch control here on timbre. So right, what's happening there, you see this little connecting gray line here, is aftertouch is controlling the amount of LFO. So in this case, we could leave that on operator 2 like that. But on operator 1, why don't we just control the overall timbre by aftertouch? So now it's controlling the amount of LFO to timbre on operator 2, but just the amount to the timbre itself on operator 1. Going Carl. So let's add some controlled brightness. Or we could use the amplifier for distortion. Sounds really nasty there. Now, if we add noise, this is how we can get this sort of like drum and bassy type sound. And we have all sorts of different waves too. So if we want to use like an upsaw, for instance. So using this sort of difference here. Let's add a little bit of pitch envelope. So the way this works is your pitch envelope, this is your amount. We're not going to hear anything until we move the middle parameter here. You can hear how it's coming up to that note. Let's put it in a mono mode right now, but we do have some release on. I don't believe it does any, it doesn't do any sys in or out, Rob. It just does Halogen because it's its own unique architecture. So there's really no way you could go into Dext and basically do all the same things, right? Just set up a 4-operator synth and you could probably get pretty close if you're good at sort of sussing out what's happening under the hood here. But so let's add some glide, you know. I mean, just so nasty. Really congested frog territory here. We can reset this if we wanted to, right? So we have an interesting sort of wub sound. What are some other things we could do? We can control the key tracking with timbre the timbre with key tracking. Don't really notice too much of a difference here. So why don't we use a little bit of LFO to the panning? Just on one operator, right? And this is where, for me, it gets really interesting. Let's turn the depth off on the reverb, filter all the way up, density size all the way down, and mix all the way up. Now we can use this reverb actually for like chorusy type effects. So if you're listening in headphones, you just heard how incredibly stupid wide that was. If we increase density a bit, we start getting these really metallic. Let me turn release off for this example, just so you can really hear the reverb. Adding a little size fixes the metallic thing and gives it this. Just a little bit though. Now, as we increase the mod, it works just like a chorus would, right? So here, we really can use it basically as a chorus. Kind of boring, right? Just the smallest amount of noise makes it sound really tough. So really tight sized, pretty good amount of density. Really sick sort of, again, like kind of FM bass, London bass. You can slow the intro down a bit here. Yeah, it can go crazy. Let's take it further. Let's add more effects just in the macro here. So that's actually a way using mod or effects to get the parameters to go even further than you can, even if you max them out, let's say. That's one way you could do that. So, for fun anyway. So again, let's just save this real quick. We'll call this a bass. Who am I? I'm Vulture Culture. We'll call this one Too Much Ketamine. And we can just call this bass. I don't know. I wouldn't. Mono. Swell. Wide. Aggressive. Dark. But also bright. Maybe bright. Dirty. I don't know. Save that real quick. Okay, done. Too much ketamine. All right, shout outs to whoever votes on something next. Yeah, kind of crazy up here. Wouldn't really use it, but you will notice that this doesn't have necessarily the strongest fundamental. So my homie, John Skippy Lemcool, actually has this in Unify already. And I don't actually have Unify, so I can't really recommend it because I haven't used it. But he was telling me that they added like basically a sub oscillator to Halogen, so that within that plugin, if you open up Halogen in that, you do have a sub oscillator, which for me would be super useful for this type of sound, because this is like a very cool texture, but you would still need that fundamental in there to make it work. So this is really good with layering, I would say. Aquatic, I haven't seen Annihilation, sadly. That would be awesome, though. I need to check it out. What's that movie about? Sounds great. Something percussive. I don't have an affiliate link. I'm happy enough to have been able to make some of the presets for it, so very cool. Anarcho Arachnid, how's it going? I'm glad you're learning. Can we make a sound called Not Enough Ketamine? Okay, so let's go do really percussive stuff. So the trick to this is going to be to leave limiting off all the time. And we could let's use disparate ratio. So 1/2 and 3 or 5, because those are going to give us weird bands anyways. So one thing to creating any sort of pitch sound is to increase the starting point and then just give it a little bit so it's got a falling pitch. So if I slow it all the way down, you'll hear. Will someone else explain Unify to Damien? Because I don't think I could give the best example of what it is exactly. Harmonically dense pass with classic subtractive envelope filter combo. Can you change LFO speed per key? That's a good question. I don't think so, because I don't see key tracking here. I don't believe so. It does sound amazing, and thank you for shouting it out, Carl. So, but if we go for like a really fast attack time, hear how it just adds a little bit of a thwack onto the front of the sound? We can take that further by increasing mod. Let's increase mod to both of the timbre, or let's, just for the fuck of it, we've been using timbre a lot. Let's use Distort. So this is going to take us into this just basically pure noise, right? But Brian, we'll do kind of like a combo of Brian and Adapt. We'll go for like a classic subtractive envelope filter, but we'll do a sweep sound next, Brian. So what we need to do is use the amp modulator, or I'm sorry, envelope here, to modulate distortion. And because we're using these weird ratios, we're actually getting this sort of we really haven't touched like the standard stuff. I mean, like, do you guys see how quick and easy it is to create? What a sound, right? Let's bring the mod in on both of the operators. Now, if we turn limit on, because that's a very harsh sound, we'll hear a very different type of sound. Turning that off though. Maybe on just one or the other. Kind of like it with the limiting on operator 2 at the 5-to-1, but on the half. Craziness, isn't it? Let's bring the amp all the way down. Again, we can put this into mono mode. What a sick, I mean, it's kind of a bassline sound too. Blake 7 for Carl, I got you. Let's apply the LFO to, what do we want to apply the LFO to? What would be fun? We can, we could do a couple of things here. So we could bring the rate down. By bringing in sample and hold, we're actually kind of smoothing it out. Now it sounds great, but it's just so bright. So I just want to use the macro and bring it down. Oh. Size, density, filter all the way down, so we can just bring in some chorus here, bring the rate kind of slow. That's the sound for me. What was it? Blake 7? Blake 7. Okay, so that's what we'll call it. Blake's 7. I'll reach out to GForce and see if we can add these to the library. I mean, totally cool if they can't, because they've already released the thing. I understand. We haven't talked about crossmod yet. We need to do that. So we'll do that. Percussive, pluck. Aggressive, bright, dirty, noisy. Yeah. There we go. Close that. So good. With the timbre all the way up, we have a completely different sounding patch. I really like it down though. It gives it this dark, spooky sort of thing, for sure. Okay, so we need to talk about crossmod. I promised I'd talk about everything in this stream. And we need to do some sort of evolving, sweeping type thing. So let's start by turning timbre all the way down. It's funny, when we go from a patch that used pitch envelope, it's almost like we have to use up those voices before the pitch envelope resets. So now we have just a sine wave. So we're going to use bright here. And a ratio of 2-to-1. 2 to 1 and 4 to 1. Trying to take it into, vaguely square wave territory. Let's bring the sustain all the way up, right? Let's add limit on. I heard some aliasing there. Let's turn it off. I kind of liked it. Let's add some cross modulation, right? So now we're modulating operator 1 with the pitch of operator 2. And then we'll really hear the difference as we use Xmod here. So the goal here is to try to get almost like a PWME type. And for the LFO, let's slow the rate down. We don't need much. Can you grab the circles in the middle with the mouse? Oh, what did I just do? Oh, I created a random patch. We haven't even talked about the random patch. I guess if you press the circle in the middle, it gives you a random patch. I thought it only happened from the spark up here. It's sometimes going to be very useful. I mean, it's a better sound designer than I am. Maybe not on that one, though. So, going back to what we were doing. It's set both of these to 2 to 1 for now. Yeah, I could have used undo, I suppose, Triplanetary, but it's kind of fun to just start over. And honestly, I got kind of more where I wanted to be with like sort of a PWM type sound. Very mid-rangey. A lot of cool movement in the sound. So let's increase mod, amp, mod to everything, right? So we're really affecting the brightness, distortion, and timbre with our envelope, so we can start to, sort of build in this sort of pad-like character. This is what I was going for, almost like Oberheimy, right? Let's slow mod down even a little more. Quite as much amp, only because we're going to feed it into some reverb, right? Now, if I turn the panning and take it really far left and right, using that cross mod there. So let's see if we can modulate the pitch of oscillator 1 with the LFO just a bit. Just again to make it a little bit wider. Of like FM-y, Oberheimy. I'm going to back the timbre down a bit. If we take it too far with the size and density, it's like kind of almost infinite. It doesn't necessarily sound like ideal either. Aftertouch-in. Yeah, just really goes crazy. Yes, you can, Hypothesis. So I don't have my programmer hooked up for this right now, but we could just go to this little cog up here. 4650 is what it was when I tried to check out. 33 pounds. And we could go to MIDI CC. If we hit edit, everything turns on. So all you do is, like, let's say you want to control timbre with your mod wheel, right? So I just hit that, move my mod wheel. I think that should do it. I don't know. Mod wheels on Oberheim synths are interesting. There we go. Did that do it? I don't think so. Edit CC. Here we go. I don't know why it's not getting that CC. Oh, that's my pitch wheel. There we go. So now it's sent to that. So you kind of take it into trombone, more trumpety. So it's interesting because they didn't actually use, everything they could have. Or rather, I remember sending him an email and being like, hey, there doesn't seem to be like a mod wheel thing. And they're like, that's because everything can, so like your mod wheel can modulate all of these things, different amounts and stuff. From Tommins for $38. That's great. So, anyways, this is like a pretty good example of kind of a Oberheim-y type thing. And, we could slow it down even further if we wanted to take it. Like it actually with the two ratios. Let's try a third just for fun. So half ratio sounds really great. Let's call this one Mournful Oberheim. If anybody has any other questions or patches, we've got about 15 minutes left. So I'd love to do one more patch. Pads, evolving, long release, poly, sweep, swell, wide, deep. Yeah, okay. I don't know if warm. Okay, we'll save this one too. Cool. What I will do is I will put all of the patches we've made in this live stream. I'll make that available to members of this channel. I think because Halogen FM's already finalized, I can't, add them to the factory library. But what I can do is if you're a member of this channel, $5 a month helps keep me alive. You could get these patches for free. How about we do it that way? That way you guys have that. A throbbing gristle So I know the band, but I'm trying to. Oh, Vision says guitar patch. Okay, we could do a guitar patch. Let's go to, what is it, 4-1? I think it's like your kind of classic DX7 guitar. Open up here, and yeah, that pitch envelope's actually a good thing. So it's kind of like the jazz pick. I don't know if this is the right ratio, but this is like a common formula in the DX7. Slow decay. Lots of velocity too will help this. Well, we're kind of getting into almost more like E-piano, almost like Wurlitzer. I think 5-1's a little better. Oh, this is interesting. Putting it into this territory with the ring modulator here. Almost gives it like a broken blues guitar amp. Yeah, it's good. So what I'm going to do is turn the volume all the way down on operator 1. Bring this up to 5-1. Add some velocity to both of these guys, actually. So you'll notice what I have basically is a fundamental. Again, we're unfortunately sort of going into E-piano territory. But so we've sort of got a blown one. It sounds like a totally vintage. Like a real busted. So using crossmod here actually kind of gives it like more of a... So just not quite all the cross mod. Really takes it, so not a guitar, but actually a really kind of cool. And then we can play with the reverb here. I was not expecting the sound. Bluesy e-piano thing. And if we wanted, oh yes, we can do this. We can turn this into sort of give it that Rhodes piano thing by adding the LFO to the pan. Let's take it like half the way, you know? Just a little goes a long way with that. Or maybe just a one. Oh yeah, that feels like a Rhodes, right? I wish I had put this one in the factory library because it's cool and a little different than everybody else did. Ah, so cool. Ah, that one's really great. We'll save this one as who are gonna do this one on? Yeah, Leslie, that's what I was going for. What do we call this one? Let's go call it, I don't know. I don't want to, Vulture Rhodes is a little, I don't know. I mean, it's good, but I want to give it some sort of a name. Can you guys think of one that would be, maybe we'll just call it Secondhand Rhodes. Yeah, Secondhand Rhodes. And we'll put this in the keys. We're going to call this one, not really any of these. Pluck, poly, wide, dark, deep, nostalgic, soft, and warm. There we go. Like I said, I'll make these available for members of the channel. Oh, this one's so good. Oh, it's so freaking cool, isn't it? Blue Balls is a good one. Oh, what a fun patch to end on. I'm so happy about that one. Like, just super cool. Completely different than I was expecting, you know. So yeah, what do you guys think? Did I successfully convince any of you? For me, Halogen is, you know, it's like the future of FM, in my opinion. It's very hard for me to imagine a world where we go back from this, because it's so fast and fun and awesome. I think it just sounds good too, you know, like it doesn't, you know, the bass thing is real. Like if you're going to use this with bass, you just need to layer in like a sine wave underneath it and you're good, or square wave. Thank you, Hypothesis. Rusty Hammers is a great name for it. Should have used that. It's something special. And I think that, you know, there's been like these moments in FM synthesizer history, especially post the 80s, right? And I think of like when FM7, I think it was FM7 by Native Instruments, and then FM8 came later, but that was like a big deal, like a DX7 emulation. We wouldn't have dubstep without that, right? That came out, that was a big deal. I think Korg 6 was a big deal as far as making, you know, sort of traditional Yamaha DX7 synthesis understandable by having the LEDs change underneath the faders and the knobs, so you know what's a modulator, what's a carrier, things like that. But then moving forward into Halogen FM, I'm like, this is it. Like, I don't see a world where we're going to go back to dealing with all of the shit. Yeah, I think it's something cool and unexpected is a great way to describe it, Aquatic, for sure. Hydrasynth is definitely, you know, there's no way to say like a Hydrasynth can't do something. I'm not aware of a single thing a Hydrasynth can't do, honestly. As far as like just, you know, is there anything it can't do? I think it could do everything. Not everybody loves the sound, or maybe you want an analog synth to complement it. Like that, I understand. But as far as just like raw functionality, I don't know if it has like granular or spectral stuff. Volca FM too. Yeah, you're right, Visions. That's a big step forward too. Learning on a DX. Yeah, so there's going to be certain people who are FM wizards. And I don't think Halogen is for them. Because they're going to be like, well, wait a second. Now I wish I had another operator I could modulate the modulator with and things like that. You can't do that with Halogen. Halogen stripped that extra layer of complexity out of it to make it more useful. You can't do a Brian Eno style, like 6 operator, but they're all, you know, make like an organ pad type sound. Because here you're only going to ever have 2 carriers, so you can't have a 6 carrier type sound. So yeah, I really appreciated Synthonic. Thank you very much. It was an honor to be able to make some patches for this, and I hope that in the future GForce will be able to work again, because I think you guys know there's really only 2 companies that I time and time again am just like, they knocked it out of the park, and it's GForce and Spectrasonics. I love Cherry Audio. I think Cherry Audio is doing great stuff. Atomica was amazing, but I do still think the difference in price between GForce and Cherry Audio, you do get just a little bit more sweetness on the resonance of a lot of the GForce filters, to where I'm like, God, it just sounds so good. Atomica sounded great too, though. Yeah. Yes, and absolutely, you guys should be checking out Art of Rock on Angel Smith's channel. So if you haven't yet, please go subscribe over there. I listen every Saturday when I can. I'm at work when it's going on, so I just like when I'm grabbing lunch or something, I'll put it on. But if you want like incredible knowledge from a bunch of just the most interesting people about how to go about making music, but especially dark, aggressive music, it's an invaluable resource. And I think it's one of those things where YouTube, it's like YouTube's tough to get that kind of info out because people don't like, it's hard to hook someone with that, but I am hooked because the knowledge is crazy. I learn something every stream. Everybody who's part of that podcast is just gives me something every week. So I appreciate you guys very much. I've been a fan of the Art of Rock podcast longer than I think you guys have been fans of what I'm doing. So I appreciate you guys very much. Yeah. Very cool visions. Yeah, it's worth it. Yeah, I've seen you over there, Adapt, actually. So with that, I think that's a good place to call it for the evening. Super pumped about Halogen. I hope you guys felt that I covered everything. If I missed anything, please drop it in the comments below and I will answer your questions because I wanted this to be somewhat definitive as far as, you know, what's going on with this awesome plugin. So thank you, Carl. It was a fun one. Continue to be excellent, guys, and I will see you next week.